Good morning, everybody. Good morning. It's always good to be together. In case I haven't met you yet, my name is Eric, and I'm the lead pastor here. So just wanted to say welcome and want to take a moment to just comment on what Michelle was talking about with our Candy Palooza last weekend. Love what Leah is doing with our kids' ministry. Loved the event. I saw the pictures, and I saw bobbing for apples, and the first thing I thought was bobbing for strep throat. As a parent, that's just the first thing that came to mind. So anyway, I think all of our kids stayed healthy, I hope, anyway. But great event. Well, as Michelle said, we are in our fifth and final week in this series called Catch Your Breath. And really for the last month, we've been talking about something that is so prevalent in our society. It's something that is so deeply embedded in our culture. And for many of us, if not all of us, it's this issue. It's something that is keeping us and holding us back from really being the people that we want to be. I mean, in so many ways, it's keeping us from being the spouses that we want to be. It's keeping us from being the parents that we want to be. It's even keeping us, in some cases, from being the friends and the neighbors and the co-workers we want to be. And if you're a follower of Jesus, this one thing, this issue could be the very thing, the single greatest challenge that is keeping us from really and truly and fully experiencing the spiritual life that we're pursuing. And this one thing, as we've been saying through this entire series, is hurry. It's the issue of hurry. In fact, from the first week, we've been building on this statement that the speed at which many of us are living just isn't compatible with the life we envision. And as I thought about this statement, as I've been kind of reflecting on this through the entire series, there's something that I find so alarming in this, because I think a lot of us, when we look at our lives and we see the busyness and we see the overload, I don't know that many of us really even call it hurry. We just call it life. Right? I mean, this is just the way life is, right? This is normal. And one of my favorite TV shows that's come out in recent years, kind of a newer show, it's the Disney Plus series called The Mandalorian. Now, I see some I'm glad you're tracking with me. I thought of you because I know we're fellow Star Wars nerds here. But this is a Star Wars series you can see on the screen here. And it's a cool series if you don't know much about it. And one of the things I do love about it is that it is set in the Star Wars galaxy far, far away. But it focuses on this main character, and you can see him on the screen here. This main character, he's a pretty cool guy. He is a Mandalorian warrior who has become like this notorious bounty hunter throughout the galaxy, right? And so he's kind of feared and known throughout the galaxy, and he's just a tough guy. He's really cool. But one of the things you learn pretty quickly about this Mandalorian bounty hunter is that he follows this ancient order, this strict code of the Mandalorians, which is like their code of honor. Right? And it's everything to him and to his people. And so periodically you'll hear him say something. Anytime he's about to do something that aligns with this code of honor, he says this, he makes this statement, and it's become kind of like his catchphrase. Because what he says is, this is the way. This is the way, which is kind of what he's saying here is like, this is what we do. This is what must be done. This is our way of life, right? This is the way. And as I thought about this, and as I thought about where we were going with the teaching this morning, I realized that this catchphrase really summarizes how so many of us are just going through life, right? Just caught up in this busyness, caught up in this fast-paced and hurried world in which we live. And we see the hurry in our lives, and we see the busyness, and we see the frenetic pace that we're moving throughout each and every week, from this week to the next. And it's almost like we've just resigned ourselves to it. Because this is the way, right? This is just the way life is. The other night, Amanda and I were on a phone call with one of our adult daughters who's still living up in Indiana, and she was telling us about some stuff going on in her life, and she was getting us caught up, and she was just talking about some things that are really stressing her out. You know, and it's all the stuff that you would imagine. Like, it's the usual suspects, things like her job and things like her money, her finances, and her schedule, she's so busy right now, and it's just stressing her out. And as, you know, she was telling us this, my heart kind of broke for her, because I know exactly how that feels. Right? I remember walking through that same feeling when I was a young adult, and I know many of you have walked through that. You can resonate with that and sympathize with that. And so, you know, my heart went out to her in this conversation, but then, you know, with all the fatherly compassion I could muster, I finally broke in and I just said, babe, this is the way, you know? And I didn't say it exactly like that, but more or less something along those lines, right? Because I wanted her to know that this is just normal, right? What you're feeling is just normal. Like, this is life, right? And again, there's something a little bit cynical behind that too, because what I didn't say, but what I was thinking was, welcome to the world of adulting, and welcome to the real world. I mean, this is life. And by the way, all that stress you're feeling and all that overwhelm that you're feeling about your job and about your finances and about your busyness and your hurried schedules and all of that, I mean, that is just life. And by the way, that's going to be your life for the rest of your life. Yay! It's the life you've always wanted, right? But it's not. It's not the life that any of us always wanted. And yet here we are, and we keep finding ourselves running through life at this speed of hurry, and it's like we just keep shrugging our shoulders, like, no, this is the way. This is just the way it is. Right? I mean, I can't remember the last time we were able to get our family together for a meal around the table, everybody at the same time, but this is the way, And I know stuff at work is really crazy right now. It's been crazy for a long time, and I'm running like 100 miles an hour, and I'm so stressed out. It's made me this jerk to all of my coworkers, but hey, this is the way. And I'm always rushing from this moment to the next, never slowing down, and I keep missing these incredible moments, these meaningful moments with my family. I'm never really present in those moments, but this is just the way, right? And I mean, who isn't stressed out about finances, and our money and how it's invested and making sure we can send our kids to college and making sure we can fund next year's Disney vacation, right? Because after all, this is the way. And what I want us to understand this morning and to realize this morning is that the life that I just described, I mean, there is a vast chasm between that life and the life that Jesus describes in the Scriptures. In fact, we talked about this. We looked at this in the very first week of the series, that what Jesus described was this life that is rich and abundant. He described this full life of love, joy, and peace. And I'm just convinced that every single one of us, and it doesn't matter if you're a Jesus follower, it doesn't matter if you're like new to church, or maybe you're coming back to church for the first time after a long time, and it doesn't really matter where we are in our journey of faith. I believe that every single one of us, if we were to just describe the life that we've always wanted, it would always come back to those three things: love, joy, and peace. And regardless of the life that we would describe, or the life that we may have envisioned for ourselves, the reality is that Jesus' vision for your life and for my life has always been the full life that he describes in the Scriptures. It's always been this full life of love, joy, and peace, and this is why Jesus came to this world in the first place. Right? It's why he followed his destiny all the way to a cross where he died, and it's also the reason why he 2 days later then was resurrected miraculously and supernaturally back to life again, so that you and I could find and actually live this rich and abundant life that we find in him. But as we've already said, the speed at which many of us are living just isn't compatible with that life. In other words, hurry is incompatible with the full life of Jesus. And so often we run into that reality, and we feel it, and we might even grieve it, but then again, we just shrug our shoulders like, this is the way. This is the way. And throughout this series, really going back to the very first week, we've been asking this question: is there a better way? Is there a better way? And yes, the answer is there is a better way. And it's the way of Jesus. And so this morning, as we wrap up this series, and I wanted to bring it to a close by looking at an invitation that Jesus gives us in the Scriptures. And as we look at this, and as we really explore the nuances and the imagery that Jesus uses within this invitation, my hope is that we all come away with this with a much fuller understanding of all that Jesus has made available to us, and what he's really inviting us into. And we'll see that the way of Jesus, the way of Jesus can help us catch our breath and actually learn to live a slow down life in the midst of this hurry up and fast-paced world that we live in. So I want to look at this with you, and I'm going to read it for you, and we find this in the book of Matthew, chapter 11, verses 28 through 30. All right, it's on the screens for us. I'm going to read this for us. It says, "Then Jesus said, 'Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light.'" So Jesus opens up this invitation by saying, if you're burned out, like if you're beat down, if you're weary and wounded, whoever you are, and if we just put this in our normal like day-to-day life, I mean, if you're stuck in traffic and you're hurrying and you're running late, or you're hopelessly behind on that project at work, or that assignment in your class, or if you're just struggling to make it through this day, Jesus says, "Come to me, and I will give you rest. I will refresh your life. I will give you the kind of rest that restores your weary and hurried soul." Jesus says this, and then he follows it with something that sounds kind of strange to us, right? Because Jesus says, right after he says this, he says, "Take my yoke upon you." Take my yoke upon you. Now, again, this is some weird language that Jesus just kind of sneaks in there for a couple of reasons, right? I mean, first of all, the word yoke, I mean, that's not really something we say a whole lot these days, right? And so it kind of sounds funny to our ears, but it's also a strange choice of words because, I mean, in this context, because a yoke is a tool that's used for work. And so it's almost like Jesus is saying, hey, if you're tired and you're worn out and you're looking for some rest, come to me and I will give you a tool for work, right? And so it's a little bit strange because a yoke in the literal sense was a tool used in farming. Right? And this is kind of old world stuff. It's kind of old school, but you've seen this before because, I mean, a yoke was a wooden apparatus that was used to hitch one ox to another ox so that when it came time to do the hard work, the heavy lifting and things like that, these two things like plowing a field or pulling a heavy cart, the two oxen could shoulder the weight of the load together. Right? That's how a yoke works. That's what it's designed to do. But yoke here in the statement that Jesus is making has another meaning. Because Jesus, as we've talked about before, Jesus was a rabbi, right? And every rabbi in his day had a set of teachings on how to be human, right? And so these teachings would have covered everything. I mean, they would have provided insight and guidance on everything from marriage and parenting to managing finances, and would have included things like how to navigate relationships and conflict resolution and all of it. And so this set of teachings was really the rabbi's way of helping his apprentices shoulder the weight of life. And this rabbi's teachings was often referred to as his yoke. And so that's what Jesus is talking about here. And so Jesus says to take his yoke upon you, and then he said that his yoke is easy. And probably a better way to translate that word easy is well-fitted or custom-made. Right? So for all the runners in the room, right? I'm not a runner, but one thing I know about running is just from talking to runners, is that runners like to go to these special shoe stores, right, where you can buy the best brands and running shoes and that kind of thing. But then at these specific kind of stores, they can actually take those shoes and they can custom fit them to the shape and the size and the arch support that you need specifically for your feet. And they'll analyze everything. I mean, they'll analyze your stride and everything, and they'll make sure that these shoes are the right fit for you. And this is a big deal because when you think about it, I mean, again, for runners, your running shoes are something that you put onto your body for the purpose of torturing yourself, right? But when the shoe has been perfectly form-fitted to the shape of your foot, what it does is it makes the torture just a little more manageable, right? Because what it's doing is it's like minimizing the agitation and the discomfort that happens in your feet and really the rest of your entire body when you're running, right? And listen, every runner that I've ever talked to has told me that running doesn't get easy. Like, it doesn't matter how much you run, it doesn't matter how great a shape you're in, it never gets easy. It's always hard, but having the right shoes can make all the difference. And the easy yoke of Jesus is like that. Right? It doesn't mean life is going to get any easier, and it certainly doesn't mean that the world is going to slow down. But it does mean that his rhythms of grace and his mercy and his supernatural power are tailor-made and form-fitted to the unique challenges and circumstances that you and I are walking through each and every day, so we can shoulder the weight of life with ease. And this is beautiful. And this is awesome. But don't miss the implications here. Because the easy yoke of Jesus means that he is not offering us an escape from life's burdens, but he is offering us equipment to bear those burdens better. And he invites us to take up his easy yoke and to join our lives with him like two oxen hitched together, shoulder to shoulder, walking with Jesus side by side. With Jesus doing all the heavy lifting, and with Jesus setting the pace, which means moving slow, unhurried, fully present to each and every moment, full of love, joy, and peace. Because that's the yoke of Jesus. In other words, that's the way of Jesus. And what Jesus teaches us here through the imagery and the metaphor of the yoke is that the way of Jesus is a way of life. The way of Jesus is a way of life, and it's a way of life that Jesus not only calls us and invites us into, but he also offers his presence and his strength and his relationship to actually help us live it. But to pursue the life of Jesus means that we have to embrace the lifestyle of Jesus. So years ago, and this was like 20 years ago or more, it's been a long time, but I decided that I was going to be a golfer, right? And so what happened was, around this time of my life, I had several friends who were golfers. They enjoyed golfing, and they kind of inspired me. But also what happened was I'd kind of gone golfing with them at one point, and I had one of those like rare and like, it was a fluke, right? It was a fluke, incredible shot on the golf course. And at that moment I thought, okay, I want this life, and I want this for the rest of my life. And so the next thing I knew is I had a set of golf clubs, and I even had like one of those gloves that golfers wear that I thought was kind of cool. And so I became a golfer, like virtually overnight. I mean, that was my mindset. And so when I showed up to the golf course the next time with to play some golf with my buddies, I just fully expected that I was going to step up to the tee and I was going to hit that ball, drive it like 300 yards straight down the fairway, right? That was my expectation. It didn't matter that I hadn't even swung a club at all since my last round of golf, which might have been 3 or 4 weeks before, right? I just expected that I was going to hit the course that day and have a great round of golf, because I was all about having that life without the lifestyle, right? I mean, I wasn't going to be the guy that was going to go play multiple rounds of golf every week, and I wasn't going to give up my free time to practice my swing and to analyze and perfect my swing. I mean, I just wanted to show up on the golf course once in a while and be a scratch golfer. I wanted the life without the lifestyle. But what I found out pretty quickly is that without the lifestyle, there really is no life in the game of golf, right? In fact, it's pretty miserable. If you're not working at it and working really hard, what I found is that golf is really, really frustrating and incredibly infuriating, and at times even humiliating. And so I reached this crossroads in my golfing career pretty early on, where I had to decide, what kind of golfer am I going to be, right? Am I going to be just a casual golfer, or am I going to be like all in? And so I decided at that moment, like this turning point moment, I decided I'm just never going to be a golfer, right? That's just not the life for me, And I know, like, if you're a golfer and you have that life and you have that lifestyle, I'm happy for you. In fact, I envy you to some extent, but I'm just never going to be you, okay? And I've come to terms with that. I'm good with that. But you all know this principle already, right? Because the same principle applies to anything, right? I mean, it applies to anyone who wants to be a cyclist or a runner or an artist or a photographer or even just a top performer in your career. Like, if you really want that life, then there's a lifestyle that comes with it. And at that point, it's not even something that you just do. It becomes a part of who you are. And there are disciplines that become a way of life that help you become that kind of person. And in the same way, the way of Jesus is a way of life. It's his way of life, and there is just no way to find the life of Jesus apart from the lifestyle of Jesus. And there are disciplines that become a way of life to help us fully live into that life with him. And we talk about these disciplines quite often. In fact, we've talked about some of them in this series, and we talk about some of them at other times as well. Some of the core disciplines, like the study of Scripture and prayer, we talk about those pretty frequently. But then just a couple of months ago, if you remember, Taylor taught us on some of these disciplines, like silence and solitude. In fact, he referenced those briefly last week as well, if you were here for that. But then earlier in this series, we talked about some other disciplines, things like slowing your life down and the discipline of practicing presence and those kinds of things. But the truth is that there are many disciplines, and they are very, they come in a wide variety. In fact, the philosopher and theologian Dallas Willard said that a discipline for the spiritual life is nothing but an activity undertaken to bring us into more effective cooperation with Christ and his kingdom, which is to say his will and his life, right? But what Willard is saying here is that the spiritual disciplines are essentially anything we do to practice the way of Jesus. They're activities that help us embrace and adopt the lifestyle of Jesus so we can experience the full life of Jesus until this just becomes our way of life. But this takes time, doesn't it? It takes time, and it can't be rushed. It won't be hurried. And I know what so many of us are thinking with this. Like, Eric, I'm already so busy. I mean, come on, this is the real world, right? This is real life, and I just can't imagine adding one more thing to my already overloaded life. And that is the reality that so many of us are feeling every single day. In fact, that is the whole point behind this entire teaching series, and it is precisely why Dallas Willard also said this. He said, hurry is the great enemy of spiritual life in our day. You must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. You see, Willard understood that hurry is incompatible with the full life of Jesus. That we cannot truly follow Jesus as his apprentices with hurry in our souls, because it will always cripple our relationship with him, and it will always sabotage our efforts to pursue this life in him. And so how do we do this? How do we eliminate hurry from our lives? And this is what we've been talking about for the past few weeks, but I want to leave you with one last call to action to help us slow down and catch our breath and remove the hurry from our souls. And this is so simple. It's so basic, and I'm convinced that many of you, if not all of you, are already practicing this in some way, in some form, in some fashion, in some area of your life. Right? It's so simple, but this simple step can be incredibly helpful in practicing the way of Jesus with intentionality and consistency. And here it is. Schedule the hurry out of your week. Just schedule it out of your week. And I know this might sound like weird, right? Like you're asking me to add one more thing into my already busy life. Well, hear me out, okay? And again, I think so many of you are already doing this in some way, but here's how this works. You look at your calendar, right? And you're going to look for those blank spaces in your calendar, like 1 to 2 hours of blank space in your calendar. Now, I know that some of us are going to have to scroll maybe a few days out to find that, or maybe even a few weeks, or maybe even a month or more in order to find that blank space in your calendar. But that's what you're looking for. 1 to 2 hours of blank space. And then when you find those, you can actually schedule nothing in those 1 to 2 hour blocks. Just schedule nothing, literally put that into your calendar in those blank spaces, right? And obviously you have to do this where it makes sense, right? I mean, you can't probably do that during your work day, like hours where you're at the office or whatever. You probably can't do this while you're in class at school and that kind of thing. But where this makes sense, and you get that. But where you see the blank spaces in your mornings or in your evenings or on your weekends and days off and things like that, just block out those blank spaces with nothing. And you can actually put that in, that's what you can call it, right? You can actually put that in your calendar. And if that's going to drive you nuts by calling it nothing, well, then maybe you can just call it margin. Or my favorite, call it breathing room. And then treat those blocked out times in your schedule like you would any other appointment or any other event or any other time commitment. You guard it. You protect it because it's sacred. And again, I'm not saying that you're going to block out 5 to 6 hours every night, or you're going to block out 8 to 10 hours every weekend or anything like that, but just 1 to 2 hours where you can. And here's what you can do now with those blocks of breathing room in your week. You can slow down. You can sit in quiet. You can have a family meal, everyone together. You can read an inspiring book. You can have coffee with a close friend. You can study the scriptures. You can watch a sunset on the beach with your spouse. You can spend some time in silent prayer and meditation. You can rest. You can catch your breath, can enter the goodness of that moment. So the margin in your week is what allows you to go deeper in your relationship with Jesus and learn the rhythms of doing what Jesus would do if he were you. And through this simple practice, you and I can gradually learn to cultivate the way of Jesus as a way of life in the midst of real life. Because what we're actually talking about here is intentionally and methodically removing hurry from our lives. And at the same time, we're carving out more room for God in our lives. We're opening up the vital space in our calendars where we can pursue him and follow him and spend time with him and learn from him. And actually experience his full life in real life. So the invitation is to come to Jesus, to receive his rest, to receive his life as our way of life. And the first step that any of us ever take into that life is just giving our life to Jesus. It's coming to Jesus and saying, Jesus, my way isn't working. It's not working, Jesus, and I'm ready to do it your way now. And so I give my life to you, Jesus. I give my hurried soul, and I give you my weariness, and I give you my anxious thoughts. And I'm ready to receive the rest that you offer within your easy yoke. And if you've never done that, if you've never crossed that line of faith and given your life to Jesus, I just want to ask you, why put that off for even another moment? When the life that you've always wanted, the life of love, joy, and peace, it's right there in the life of Jesus. And he offers that to you. So would you bow your heads with me? And if you're ready to give your life to Jesus today, in this moment, then I invite you to just say this simple but honest prayer with me. Wherever you are, you can pray these words with me as I pray them over you. Jesus, I give you my hurried and my weary and my worn out life. Jesus, I'm ready to live according to your way and to experience your full life. So I give my life to you, Jesus, and I'm ready to start following you. So with your head still bowed, I just want to ask, if there's anyone here who prayed that prayer for the first time and you gave your life to Jesus for the first time, I just want to invite you and ask you, if you would show your hand so we know who you are. Anyone who just prayed that prayer and gave their life to Jesus for the first time, if that's you, would you just lift a hand? All right. Father, even those of us who've been walking with you for some time, we know how easy it is for us to drift back into this mode of hurry, this life of busyness. And it's so easy to just get sucked into this and to accept it as normal everyday life. And yet, Father, we see time and time again how it's robbing us of the life that you desire for us. It's robbing us of the love, joy, and peace. And so, Father, we need your help. Jesus, we need your help to continue to pursue your life as our way of life. To look to you in the scriptures and to learn from you and to understand how you lived so that we can pattern our lives after you. So that we can embrace the lifestyle that you live, Jesus. And experience the life that you came to give us. Jesus, would you help us, even if it's something as simple as looking at our calendars and just carving out the space, Lord, would you help us to take those simple steps? We love you. In Jesus' name, amen.